Welcome to the Abez Show, where my guests I've known for years and years. Khalil and I go way back, as he sat chairman of one of my startups. Hi, Khalil. How are you?
Hey Abe, how are you? How's everything going?
Good. Thank you for asking, and thank you for doing this. Tell me more about what you do, and tell me how you got here.
Thanks, Abe. So I started off, after graduation from university at Purdue University. I worked for American Express for a while as a financial advisor, and there I got my grip on financial services and the different derivatives of the stock market and the investment side. And from there, I then decided that it was, there's an opportunity. It was time for me to go back to the Middle East and, start working on the financial ecosystem of some sorts. So I decided to go and I joined ABC Bank, where I've set up their investment, US investment and international investment desk for them. I was the head of the brokerage department there and for their subsidiary. And I set up the whole US desk from scratch and grew there. And then I saw the gap in the ecosystem, specifically in payments. And in payments back then in Jordan, there was no credit cards. There's no credit card penetration whatsoever. The majority of the cards that were issued in Jordan were either debit with a single transaction every year, or charge cards that are settled 100% at the end of the month. So I saw a need for a credit card product, and we set up and we launched the first revolving credit card ever in the history of Jordan, where it's unsecured, you apply for it, you get approved for a limit, and at the end of the month, you just pay a fraction of the balance and you carry it over. And with that, we found that the acceptance of the MasterCard brand and any other brand was almost zero. So, we're issuing these cards that are basically mostly accepted outside of Jordan. So we decided to work on the acquiring side and making sure that the MasterCard brand is accepted everywhere. And therefore we launched our acquiring services. And over the years, since we started in 1999, we were able to cover all of Jordan from north to south, east to west. Even if you're driving, anywhere in a remote area, there's a small, supermarket that accepts that. And with that, in 2006, I took the company public where I started off with $500,000. Then in 2019, my friends over at Telr gave me a call and said, hey, we have this beautiful gem, Telr. It's an online payment gateway, state of the art. And, it really needs somebody, to take it to the next level. So I decided, I'll exit. I exited ICC and I jumped over to Telr and looked at what we have, and I was super impressed. State-of-the-art technology, really proprietary. We have everything from advanced and real-time fraud monitoring system to all kinds of different channels for payments, enabling merchants to transact with their customers. And from there, I took it over in order to grow it, expand it, and polish it, and make it into something. We're building the next level online payment gateway in the GCC and the Levant. That's what we're doing, and we're almost there. COVID came in, and it accelerated a lot of things for us, but at the same time, tested us quite to the max. And that's where we are today.
Fantastic. And I know you've done a lot of offers for the startups that you run, and I know also you've launched a super cool product, in my opinion, which was the shops at Telr,
Yep.
which is in my opinion, a very needed and a very innovative product for this region. And it is true, and let's talk about this COVID aspect because, a lot of people talk about COVID in a negative sense, but there was a lot of good stories that came out of COVID as well. You know what I mean? Like I personally, I know a couple of startups in the logistics space, and obviously you guys in the fintech space
Sure.
who their growth exploded.
An HR challenge. So we have all these employees in all these offices around the world that are no longer able to go to the, we obviously shut down our offices on the 13th of March of 2020, and we haven't gone back since then. And with that, we had to manage the psychology of our employee. So the Teller employee is our biggest asset. They
Sure.
are the people that are talking to the merchants. So, and we have this culture of, we're very customer centric, we're very boutique service. So we had to make sure that, while you're working at home, and I'm sure you've gone through the same, and a lot of people did that. While you're working, there is no cutoff because you're working from your living room, from your office at home, or from your bedroom. For some people, whatever it is, there's no cutoff. There's no driving time between your office and your home. So you felt like you're always working. Zoom fatigue, Teams fatigue. Everybody's fatigued
Yeah.
from all these technologies that we were introduced, right? And so you felt like as if you're working 20-hour days. And to manage that, we had a challenge how to continue to manage the psychology and make sure that our staff are relieved, psychologically and financially as well. We had to make sure that they're very happy at the same time to give the service, to continue to portray the Teller brand from within the employee into the customer. So we did, one of the things that we did is we dedicated an hour every Thursday since March of 2020 until today, where it is a social Zoom call for all the offices around the world. We all just dial in. We have coffee together. No work is allowed to be discussed. We just sit there, look at the people bring their kids, their dogs, their cats. We just talk, discuss, joke around, play some games for an hour, connect, have that human side and manage that challenge. At the same time, earlier on in March, when we moved, so I decided to move early into working from home to test our business continuity. So I decided to go a week early before all the lockdowns happened in the UAE and the other countries. And thankfully, it was super smooth. So we did not really need anything. Because we are already a technology company and everything is paperless. The challenges that we found in moving to working from home is actually the banks were not ready. Some banks that we work with, their business continuity plan failed, and that affected our service. Not our service as far as being up and the payment gateway working, but as far as onboarding new clients with the timeline of how fast we can do that, because it took them a week just to get all the approvals within the bank to accept electronic signatures. Have exceptions for that, and not receiving the physical document of the agreement while processing an electronic version of it. And some of them could not get their staff to go online from home because of all their super security and VPNs and I don't know what the hell they're doing at banks these days. But yeah, and that failed, and that was another challenge. So yeah, you have all these smaller challenges, but you know for us they're huge because they affect our customer service, and the service. We promise to the customer that we're always there 24/7, giving him the best unique service possible.
That's amazing. Not a lot of CEOs and not a lot of leaders actually talk about mental health. And that's something that is. I had a guest earlier on the show who has an AI to measure mental health wellness. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
very cool startup out of Dubai, actually. And you mentioned something that is crucial, other than mental wellness, and we're gonna come back to that topic. But big organizations really, really suffered because they have
Absolutely.
banks, especially those big governments. How do we move their employees to home? Like you said, VPNs. I know we were working with a client. They need to plug into a normal VPN, and once that VPN comes in, they have to connect to an on their LAN VPN. It was like just a nightmare, right? And
Yeah.
specific tools. We hired quite a bit of people actually in the beginning. We didn't fire anybody in the beginning. We just people that finished their projects, we just let them go. We didn't have anything else in the pipeline. But when we hired new people, we hired consultants, and they didn't understand some of the new tools that we have. They thought everybody's on
Mhm.
an Office or all these like rigid tools.
Yeah.
We're using Notion and Miro boards and
Sure.
like you got innovative, right? And that's something that
Yeah.
now corporates went from a nice to have to a must have. Those redundancy and business continuity plans. And they're always
Mm.
this manual that has this much dust on them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they
Absolutely.
like, yeah, this technology doesn't even exist anymore, right? So, but
Yeah.
I want to talk more about mental wellness. That 1 hour a week that you said, that's fantastic. How people don't talk about work, they just talk about their families or talk. But what else, like, did you, do as a support? Did you support, like, did you have one-on-ones with people? Did you ask about how people are feeling? What does the pandemic mean? Because I know a lot of people, especially with kids, really suffered, because the kids were at home and now you have to juggle school and work.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing is, we didn't have this structure anymore of clocking in, clocking out, right? So you're always expected, within normal business hours to be available. But there was some flexibility where, if you're a mom with kids, you're married with kids, your husband is probably working from home in the next room, you're working from home, the kids are, going insane on online schooling, or they're sitting at, especially in the summertime, just sitting at home, not, there's no going out. There was some flexibility there where, that's fine. And we've had many calls where the kids are in the background, and that's fine. We've opened up HR, in a way where it's not HR, as opposed to, it is more of, a friendly, team that you can connect to. You have one-on-ones, and to be honest with you, I was always available. I've done many other, let's say, friendly calls with one-on-ones, or with certain teams, like with the sales, with the managers, and what have you. And this is also very important, to have that human effect. People are not going out, they became lonely, like you said, and all their source of social, interaction was, based with their people that they're working in, or their clients. And we did that. We've also done Secret Santa, for example, online this year. We maintained those social events and social aspects. I've employed about 25 people since last March until now, without meeting any of them. So, physically, we've interviewed them all online. They're working in different, from their home, um, and but we made sure that every Thursday, anybody new came in, we had a huge welcome party, within that social hour. And we introduced everybody from a friendly perspective. And now, the funny part is, we came out of this with a Telr mascot, because one of the employees has a dog, and they decided that he's the Telr, and we adopted it. And now we have those small, gestures, and that support the mental health, because the strain and the stress that is, on each and every employee, not just in Telr, all around the world. Zoom fatigue is something. It is absolutely a
I
thing.
agree.
And you can ask anybody now, after being online and working from home for a past year. Everybody's tired with that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's you know what I've heard so many funny stories on different, how people trying to act normal. They do something that they forget the cameras on, or what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's because people are trying. I guess this is the new norm. That's what I'm trying to say. People are trying to bring back what they had, but now this is the new reality. And in all fairness, Dubai, in my opinion, did well with throughout the pandemic, especially in the last couple of months. We are going to the
Absolutely.
office more often now. We are getting a lot of clients face to face meetings, obviously abiding to the rules and stuff like that. But still, now we're trying to find another norm, because now you're trying to, it's okay, it's fine not to go to the client's office anymore. It's totally fine to have a Zoom call. In the beginning, you wanted that, especially sales always, like, and that's the people I see that them suffer the most, the extroverts. They really want to go out, they want
Yeah.
to meet people, you know what I mean. And it was introvert heaven, you know what I mean, it was introvert
Yeah.
heaven.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely, I agree with you. And you know what? The other thing that we had to innovate is, after, because when we onboard a merchant, a new merchant, he has access to all these stellar tools, like the dashboard and what have you. and we give training. So we used to go over to the premises of the merchant and give all this training on all these tools. So we had to innovate on how do we continue to give training to other new merchants, especially that the number of merchants that are being onboarded every month has quadrupled. So how do we make the time,
Training team, yeah.
what tools do we come to continue to give that training? So there's a lot of, like you said, the extroverts or the people in the face, or let's say client facing or merchant facing, had to innovate. And we were lucky that the team did very well with this. So yeah, I agree completely. And the other thing is, just going back to mental health, we had a few, I don't want to say a few, maybe 3 or 4 COVID cases within the team in different countries. So we had to, obviously they weren't working well, they were positive, but we had continued to collaborate and connect with their families on daily basis. And once they survived, thankfully, nobody was severe enough to not make it. Everybody made it. And when they came back, we had this welcome back party, survivor party. You're stronger now, and all that. And that came a long way with the team.
Definitely, that definitely lifts employee spirit, and especially the employee that had that obviously the COVID case, but also shows the sense of family, right? So this is something that is,
Absolutely.
I think that's where companies really shined. The people that really took care, buckled up and took care of their people through COVID, and something very, very important in my ear, in my opinion. So tell me, I want to hear, like, have you tried something in even in COVID or even before that that you kind of learned a lesson out of?
Yeah, lessons learned. So I'll tell you what. I'm a kind of person that although I'm, let's say, in the leadership position of Telr, I'm not the kind of person that is you know coming in from I'm the leader, so you all have to say you all have to do what I say, or I'm not standoffish in that way. But I'm a firm believer in that we're all in the same team, and I'm the number one salesman. So I am actually on the lower end of the scale or the hierarchy, and that starts with me. So I think, and I think whatever the personality or the traits that are adopted by the top level, they trickle down no matter what. Even if you're like a very, let's say, a nervous person, or an angry person in general, and you don't notice yourself, but you'll have your end staff, working with the customers in a nervous way or in an angry way.
No.
So I believe when I came into Teller, as you know, it's been almost 2 years. The culture was different, so I decided, what, I will not take and I will not inherit a single thing from the previous management team, let's say.
Wow.
And that's really what I think what I did, and the lesson learned from that is that people resisted change at the beginning, but then they saw that the difference between the two styles, one is, created a sense of family and sense of easier and better morale within the people, within the team, and they started seeing that, the difference in the feeling being in the office, obviously before COVID and then afterwards.
The
and
culture.
and with that, yeah, the whole culture changed. And to be honest with you, the thing is, it's not about me, it's a whole team effort. So there was willingness to change, and that's what's important, and that's what you need to mold in a way where you show them why that they're willing to change, and if they change, this is the better, and how is it better.
I think it's Charles Schwab who said it once, like culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it's. But I know a lot of people have said it as well. So but I do believe I'm a big culture person. Even for my startups, people who've worked for me or worked for the company I work for had a lot of. They always thought that, hey, I'm the super serious person to come in, but I've learned a lot of ways because I've worked for different employers, and I've started my own companies, and I would give people this book was who moved my cheese to
Oh, the
everybody,
cheese, yeah.
because it's nice 37-page read. it talks about change management, and you said something earlier, like some people did resist change, and you need to
Yeah,
address that head first by either talking to them or asking them to leave, honestly, because some people do not, humans are, cultures are, they're creatures of habit, right? So they want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So people underestimate how powerful your brand values are, and how,
absolutely.
I mean, like, people think it's just, I'm going to work for this guy, but no, you're working for the brand, and you're working as a team. That whole boss mentality has to disappear, and more into the leadership mentality has to come in.
100%.
So,
100%.
okay, I'm gonna ask
100%.
you this. I told you I'm gonna ask you this curveball question. So, if you have the chance to get a superpower, okay,
Hmm.
or you would want to mimic a superhero, who would that be, or what would your superpower be?
Very interesting question. So I'll tell you what. We at Telr, we do have a superhero. Actually, our mascot is a superhero. If you
Okay.
look at us up, so we actually have the Telr superhero, and the superpower would be, I think, is to be able to multitask, um, n number of tasks, or an unlimited number of tasks, all at the same time with super speed,
Nice.
right? And that's, I think that's the superpower, because I myself, I'm a multitasker, and I'm a firm believer of doing things very quickly, obviously, without compromising the quality, but and I think this is a very good trait, especially in our fintech business and then payment processing, because this way, we can deliver so much all at the same time and bring all the value all at once to the
Sure.
customer. So I think that's our I think that's the superpower that we would love to have, and we're building towards that.
I like it. I like it. I like how everybody's giving me their own take on a superpower. So, uh, the multitasker and a taskmaster kind of superpower would be super cool, actually. So, well, again, I want to
Yeah.
thank you for today, and I'm going to leave the floor with you for if you want to put any final comments. Please go ahead, Khalil.
Abe, thank you very much. I mean, I've known you, like you've said, for years and years, and we've worked side to side on many projects, and I've always enjoyed your input, and you have a very unique view on things that really always is, most of the time, is out of the box, which makes others like me, think about what you're saying, and challenging the thought process,
Thank you.
which is great. At the same time, I really enjoyed this session, and we like you mentioned, or maybe I mentioned also, we're trying to build this next level, new gen, state of the art payment gateway leader of the GCC and the Levant, with Telr. And I think the power that we have is because we have full control over our source code and our proprietary technology. We have the power to customize, and that gave us the power to adapt and readapt and innovate and re-innovate and reinvent ourselves during this pandemic, and the launch of Telr shops, like you've mentioned, where we put ourselves out there to enable anybody and everybody and whoever it is, no matter what kind of person they are, that wants to go from offline to online, with a one-stop shop, with a website building, with the shop building, with the e-commerce platform, integrated shipping, integrated payment, and even cataloging service. So yeah, I think the power of Telr is in its brand values, the team that we have, and the technology. And it's all about our superpower. And I'll just share with you right now our superhero.
Wow.
uh yeah, this is the Telr superhero. You can see he's processing all kinds of payments all at the same time.
Wow, it's super cool. That's really really cool. I'm definitely gonna put it out there, and I'm also gonna give you our hashtag, which is our hashtag for the show is real talk, no nonsense. I think we've definitely
Great.
proven the conversation was very interesting and very stimulating. I think to talk about some of the topics that usually people don't talk about. So again, thank you very much for your time, and I
My
wish you
pleasure.
the best. Take care.
You too. Take care. Bye bye. Have a nice day.